Okay, hello and welcome to Andrew Weir Art. This channel used to be called Zoink TV, so I've got hundreds of tutorials down, well, that are just saying hello and welcome back to Zoink TV, but I've currently decided to rebrand everything that I put my portfolio on to just Andrew Weir Art. I'm sure this will evolve over time, but at the moment that includes Twitter, Gumroad, my YouTube, my ArtStation, and if any of you want to check the description for links to follow me on my portfolio websites, then that would be great. And hopefully I'll start releasing more frequent, more professional content over the coming months and years. This video, I just want to start off by saying I've just got Gumroad and I have uploaded a substance. It's one of the transmutation circles from the TV show, the anime Full Metal Alchemist. If you're interested in learning for yourself how I created that in Substance Designer, then you can download that substance and start working your way through it yourself. So it's only lightly annotated, but it's a great way to learn just by looking at a substance and seeing what somebody has done to get the result that they got. It's currently free. I've not made it super professional, so it's not something that I would consider, anyone would maybe want to spend money on, but the option does exist if anyone does want to support my content. And then past this point, things can become more professional. So currently this video I don't have any editing software, and I will be looking at free software. If anyone's got any suggestions for that, that would also be great while I'm just getting started. And overall, I just wanted to look at the material layered workflow in Unreal, which is what we're going to jump over to in a moment. But as far as my knowledge of the material layered workflow comes along, I did previously release a Substance tutorial, Substance Designer, and that showed off the actual workflow that I used in a demo. And it wasn't the perfect workflow, but it was something that I'd made up, and that's just how I worked it out, and that's how I made it. And it came in incredibly handy in the project. But the workflow that I'm about to go through is what was actually used in Epic Games on their MOBA, Paragon, which, if you're not aware, they have released all of the content for free because they've shut down that game. So you can actually start working your way through these characters, some environments down at the bottom here, all their particle effects and stuff, and just see how the guys at Epic, the guys that make Unreal, see how they make things. And I actually figured out the material layered workflow before I downloaded this content, but downloading this content confirmed that I'd worked out from multiple presentations and things how to create an optimized asset workflow in the material layered workflow. So this is the technique that they use. Things like the paint on Chimera and the dirt on Murdoch would be literally being applied on top of the base material. So the overall workflow that we're looking at is, you've got a dirt, and you can say how dirty it is. You can control where it appears, much like you would in Substance Painter, but you're doing it real time in Unreal. And obviously it's not fully painted. You can't just paint assets in Unreal at the moment in a very optimized way. So we're using Substance Painter as a base to import some maps into Unreal, and hopefully cut down on draw calls and stuff, which is one of the reasons that you would use this workflow, because you wouldn't need to separate an asset into different material layers, different material IDs even. when you can just use a texture map to control the different layers of the material. So I hope that makes sense. We're going to go over that right now. If you want to bring up an asset, bring it into Painter. I've also set it up in Unreal here. As you can see, all that's on it at the moment was a normal map. And we will go through this as quickly as possible. So if you've loaded up Painter and you've got your asset in, then maybe you want an asset like this, a weapon. In my original weapon, you'd have a lot of metal down here on the base. You'd maybe have a rubber on the butt of the gun here. Some plastic dust covers. Maybe some more plastic or metal accents or coloured metals or painted metals. Just throughout this whole thing. And again, when I originally painted this, it was just 0 to 1 texture map, export the albedo, export the normal map, the roughness map, AO and all that kind of stuff, and then bring it into Unreal, and then it would very simply in Unreal be just plug each thing into each area that it corresponds with. So that workflow does have its place, obviously. But if you're creating a game with lots of variation, so let's say I want 20 of these guns, and maybe I want my users of the game to be able to customize the weapon with different colours and things like that, then things become a little bit more complicated, because then you're going to want to have to go back into the material editor and you're going to have to mask out those sections anyway. So in the end, you're going to want to look at the material layer workflow. Speaking of Epic and the way that they've learned and what they've learned from using their own material layered workflow in Unreal, they are currently in experimental mode in Unreal 4.19 working on a new layered workflow which actually lets you change the materials. I'll put a link in the description to that as well. It's like an hour-long presentation about their new material layered workflow. It's big news, but it's not currently implemented, and there are still a few things that maybe it doesn't offer yet, so it's worth knowing this material layer with functions and material attributes workflow. But yeah, we'll just do a little bit of work on this. So I've already decided, let's say the whole bottom of this section will be your average metal. So on the bottom of this model, I'm going to want to add a base layer, and the base layer is white because, well, I mean, like, if you think about it, I mean, the base layer is everything that, because you're not placing anything on top of it at the moment, so that's constantly there. So we'll call it base metal, and everything appears above this. So we'll just so we can see it within Painter, we'll just grab a random metal, and maybe one with less normal than that, or maybe I'll just turn off the height and normal layers. So once these all load in, I'll maybe pick a different metal because that one's a little bit rubbish. Yeah, I'll go over. Well, apparently they're all going to come out like that. Maybe my normal map's messed up. So let's take the normal height off for this, and now we just got a base metal. So now everything that I do, if we think about that as, right, well, the majority of this asset is metal, but actually I kind of want this front section to be plastic, and I want some of these covers and that to be plastic. So on top of this, because less of the material can be plastic, we can grab a plastic, make it white, and just say, alright, well I want to add a black mask to that now. Again, this is what I mean saying that was white, like you don't want to add a mask to your base material, because that's always going to be below everything, no matter what. And then past that point, you're going to have to start singling out areas, much like you would with a material ID workflow, but in this case you don't need the polygons. So I'm going to start picking out some sections here, like I want this cover and that cover to be plastic, and then maybe I want this to be plastic, and that. Maybe these canisters are plastic, and then the rest of the frame, the main body of it, is metal. But maybe we want a variation of the metal, so maybe we want to add some coloured sections in. So I would duplicate this layer, move it on top of that layer, because we've established that layer as what it is, and now if I want to overwrite anything with this coloured metal, then it's going to have to be higher than the fill layer here, which I'm going to name plastic. So we've separated out some plastic and some base metal, but now I've got a more complex layer on top of that, which is going to be sort of an accent layer. So let's call that accent. I just got a new mic as well, so I'm not sure if it's picking up everything. I'm actually probably more confident that it's picking up everything more than I want it to. So my original model had like a blue metal. Maybe not physically correct to have a blue metal, but it's a sci-fi weapon, so we'll add a black mask to that, and then we'll go in there with a normal paintbrush, and I will just make the hardness of that somewhere near the top. And I've got these little dots, so maybe I want those dots to be this metal, this blue painted metal, and then I've got these little marks here. So maybe I want, if this mirror is going to work, maybe I want these to be the blue metal as well, like a separation of the material. And if I don't think that's enough of a separation, because I've already got normal detail on there, but if I wanted to make this have normal detail as well, maybe I would put it in a folder, call this accent, add a not a new folder, add a new layer, say height, turn all that off, make it a little bit higher, add a black mask to that, just copy that mask and place it into this one. As soon as I find it, yep. Okay, so now that's working. Make that one, or just remove that mask in general. So now we're working with the top layer being a folder, so we can add things like this height, so that when I start painting in this information, it looks like it's actually a different material. So, I mean, I've already got that information in there, as I say, but useful thing to know. Start painting these things in, which again, if you were doing this with a material ID, you just wouldn't be able to do it, because you need the polygons there, and because I've optimized this model and you can see my polygon layout here, I wouldn't be able to separate that, and maybe arguably it would be a waste of polygons to do that. So that's obviously why you optimize the model and then bake it down. But this workflow allows for a dynamic approach to the model. So I'm just selecting a few more areas that maybe I want to be this this blue. And I'm not going to obviously paint the entire asset how I did originally, but you can see that this is basically the normal workflow. But what you don't want to do is jump in with a normal layer, so everything's got to be done with fill layers. You don't want to jump in. I mean, I usually work in Painter with fill layers anyway, but if you jump in there and start painting in something like that, then that information is going to be lost because it's not non-destructive like the material layer workflow. So past this point, we know that the base is metal, and there's nothing we can, we don't need to do anything with that. And because I've decided this to be, say in some cases I've actually put in a material like this accent that can remove some of the parameters that you add sometimes, because now I haven't got a slider for some of the parameters. I mean, in the advanced parameters, which is actually part of the substance, you can do that, but that can destroy. So the next step, what we're going to have to do, if I just turn that mirror off, is bring this information that I've just painted out of substance. So I want to have a mask that will separate the blue areas from the white areas from the metal areas, which is currently just 3 layers. So maybe we can just add an extra one as well. I'll just quickly do a new folder, and I'll call it dirt. We'll add a new layer, and we'll not put a material in there, we'll just generally make a dirt, and then we'll pretty much just use a standard smart mask. I'll use dirt complex on the folder. Oh yeah, so I haven't actually baked the information here. So what we will do is, because we can paint the masks, we can't paint the base materials, but we can paint the masks. So maybe I'll add a paint layer, and I'll say with my dirt brush, I'll say, I want this part to be dirty. It's like where all the sci-fi gunpowders come out the back or something like that. Whatever they use, it's just sci-fi gunpowder stuff. It's messy because it's being burnt or something like that. And originally that could be controlled by the complex dirt thing, but I have not baked this. I've just brought it in from before. And now we've got a rough section of dirt, which is cool as well. So what I'm going to do with this is now in my texture set tab, which is probably a different location for you, you can add custom channels. So we'll call user 0, again ignoring the base. The base metal is not a layer, that's just the base. So forget that even exists right now, and we'll skip straight to the plastic. So name this base plastic, just boom. And then because it's black and white, I'm going to change it to that, similarly to the other black and white masks that you get here. And then we'll add user 1, which was the blue metal. So accent, and then another layer, which was our dirt. So past this point, we now need to tell substance per layer, which is where folders come in pretty handy. We need to tell it that, you know, these are the areas that I want separate. So in the plastic layer we will add in the property, the layer properties, we've got the plastic, or plasti as I've called it there by mistake, and we want that to be white, so just leave it by default. And then in the accent we've actually got a height layer here, which we could double up to have the accent, because it's not conflicting with anything, it's not adding anything, it's literally just we're making it white so that Unreal knows, so Substance knows this, paint this section with this channel. And then the same for the dirt. So it's a fill layer, so it's not got any conflicting things. So we'll get the dirt and we'll say put the dirt to white. And if I missed a step right now and I exported this, then we just get a bunch of white channels, which is not what we want. So we need to add a new base layer, which is kind of our empty layer, like it's not being used in the actual painter file, but we're going to take it off to these custom channels, and now we're going to bring them all to 0. So every layer that appears above this is going to start painting in those channels the white information. So the plastic layer, this mask that you can see there, is going to appear in the empty, you know, in the stack. It's going to be painting onto this plastic channel overall, like as the layer stack works. And if we'd left that blank, then we'd get just an empty white channel, or maybe just an alpha'd export, but as you'll see later, we're not going to use alphas unless we just put an actual mask in there. So then you're going to need to set up your own export. So I'm going to hit export textures and configuration, create our own. I'm just going to call it tutorial. So my tutorial workflow, I should have one in here somewhere which is using the layered workflow, but we'll ignore that for now and create a new one. And because I like using every channel to my advantage, I'm going to use an RGBA, and basically all the information you're going to need, it's kind of a per, like you could have, if you've got too many layers in your material, then maybe you're going to want to add, you know, more of these and fill out these channels. But I've only got 3 layers, which is the plastic, the accent and the dirt. So for me that's RGB. So what I'm going to do is get my user 0, which is my plastic, and I'll put that into the R, user 1, G, and user defined channel, which is my dirt, into the B. And then if I had a 4th one, I'd put it in there. But actually what I would usually do if I've only got 3 layers, because I'm also going to need to bring my ambient occlusion map out with this, so I'll just put that in there. But as I said earlier, I haven't actually got a baked ambient occlusion at the moment, and I think I just did that wrong. I think what you can do is you use grey channel, yeah. So it's not a major thing. I think it would work either way, but if you drag that across into it as a grey channel, then it'll fill those slots. So we've got our ambient occlusion in the alpha channel, and then we're going to want another RGB for the I've forgotten whether it's DirectX or OpenGL, but we want a normal map. So we want our baked normal map, which is there. And then we'll name these masks normal, and then obviously it's going to use the document sort of stuff, so that's just called material, which is obviously a rubbish name. I could change that to something in the actual texture sets, but I'll keep it as material, so it's just going to be called material RGB or something like that. We need to just select that tutorial, and then I'm going to put it on my desktop. So I'm just going to grab that and head over to Unreal. And I'm just going to find those textures that I just exported. Maybe I didn't export them properly, I'll just double check. This is where I realise my desktop might be a little bit cluttered. Oh yeah, found it, okay. So it just appeared around. So it's just come out of the masks. It's not used the full name that I gave it. I've already got the normal map imported, so I'm importing the masks. And what we're going to want to do with this is actually just turn RGB off, so that the different channels aren't being compressed differently to the way that they were exported. And you can actually just change that to masks, which is going to turn off the sRGB for you, and give it a compression that it thinks is necessary. And as you can see in the different channels now, I've got some interesting stuff going on. That's clearly my dirt channel. The alpha hasn't come out. Oh yeah, because I exported it as I don't have a ambient occlusion map, right? So I'm going to open this material, and there's just a few more things in here that are useful. That's useful to know. We're going to have to start using, rather than creating a material, we're going to really want to just look at creating material functions. So that's right click in materials and textures, material function. So this is where our material layer stack comes in. So this is my metal, and when I open this, you'll see it's a little bit different to what you'd usually expect. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a material attribute. So you got the material attributes layer. I want to make material attributes, which is going to look a lot more familiar, because that's just your input that you would normally have on a material. So what you're going to want to do with this is input anything that your material needs. For me, as a metal, I'm just going to give it a few things like an input. So this is where you get your function inputs. I don't want to go into this too much, but you've got your inputs and outputs, and you can just do anything in between that, and then it's reused. You might have to look at material functions if, on the Unreal website or something like that, just to learn more about it if you do find it a little bit confusing. But I've got an input of a vector 3, which is a colour, and I'm just putting that into my base colour, and I'm naming it just colour. the American way. And what I'm going to do with that past that point is duplicate to roughness. Put that into the roughness, and roughness is just a single channel, so we'll do that. And this is my metal layer, so I know that it's 100% of the time going to be, this is my metal material even, so I know it's going to be metal. So I put 1 in there for the metal. This preview is going to mess up because these inputs don't count as things, so you're going to want to input things into the previews. So for example, I want the preview roughness to be 0.5, and I want the preview colour to be a medium grey as well, even though it's a vector 3. So now that looks a lot more like a metal that I might want. And past this point you can imagine some things like you've got you know, you can put inputs in and say control how dirty this base metal is, control how, you know, what mask controls how dirty this metal is. Do you have a dirt mask for this, like we will do later? And just what does metal do in general, like rust and things, so how rusty is this metal? And all of that can be controlled as you might expect in the material, but it's per object. So this function here that we've got, just the base things that we need to make it into a metal, which I'll save. Okay, so I had to do a quick little jump cut there because I moved over to my second screen by mistake, but all I was going over was if we get our gun material and then we keep this in, I'm used to just swapping around to different screens. If we keep this in the original format and we drag in our metal material, then you'll see it comes in as its own node, and the roughness and colour inputs are the inputs that we just created. So I hope you can kind of, if you've never seen that before, that is a very powerful thing to do. And then past this point, the way that Paragon used it, as I mentioned earlier, is we would need to change this into a node that can contain all of these material attributes into one input and output, while also displaying the material. So that's luckily for us, because we're in Unreal, there is a little button that does that for us. I don't know how you'd get any of this done in any other software, so it's great that we're using Unreal. Just hit a button and, you know, someone's done that amazing bit of work for us. And past that point, this would be acceptable to go into here. So remember that was an output. If we double click on this, the output was a material attribute, and so now we're working with the material as a whole rather than its individual pieces. You can break that, so break material attributes, and then you can get that and change things that you want to do and then bring it back and make it again, but we'll ignore that, and we've got our base metal. But now we're going to drag in our masks, and we want to separate, you know, where's the metal. So we can use the pre-made material attribute, which was the let's see if it works, the material 10 layer blend. 10 layers is a bit of overkill. Previously when I'd done this workflow, I only needed 3 or 4 layers, so you could either do the 10 layer blend, or you could just use a single blend. Let's see. You would, yeah, material layer blend simple, or material layer blend complex, or whatever the other option is. Material layer blend standard, yeah. So that's going to include more of the attributes, and all you need to do is get, so if we had two different metals and one of them was the blue that we were on about earlier, you know, that we wanted to separate out, then we would input the colour blue, keep the other one as a silver. Our base material is that base metal that we were talking about, so in this example it's the grey metal, and then technically this metal that I'm putting in now would have to be the plastic, but we can use the green channel from this and then plug that into our output. And yeah, I thought that might happen. These need an input, so let's just make that back to what it was, 0.5 on all of them, and then it might struggle to convert some of these things, probably. So if it comes up with an error now saying can't, you know, because we just plugged a single function into a V3, you know, a single channel. But that seems to have worked. So now if I get my weapon, we can see that those areas that I painted, those areas that I wanted to be blue are now blue. So if I created a material that was identical to the one that we had in Painter, like that sort of scratched, you know, we'd import a roughness map with scratches on it, we would plug that into our material attributes, you know, get this sort of like, I guess that's sort of a compression artifact, but it's kind of like a spotty metal sort of thing, like it's got a bit of surface to it. We could bring that in and then we would have that there, but then the power from that is, alright, well this is great, but I don't like it blue, you know, maybe the enemy players have a red rifle instead. So within this function, maybe I want to just change that to a parameter instead. So color, and we've got our base blue, which is the intended color, and I guess I'll fake the other layer and I'll add another stack on here. So we'll keep that like that. So we want a red rifle now. So I can get my material, as you would, create a material instance, call it red. On the instance here, just change that to, wow, I've not used this before, but that's pretty cool. We've got some save sibling, save child stuff, that's cool. Change that to the red that I wanted, so now the enemies have red guns, and you know, and because it's an instance, it's already computed and stuff, so it's cool. Basically it's already got it, so let's just drag that in, and now we've got a variation. You got coloured variation, and past that point, you know, we want to get the rest of our layers in there. So it does work in layers, so it's working from, you know, anything we do after this can't include anything that we painted on a lower level. So if I take this and get my other metal, you know, so this one's technically becoming our plastic now. So I haven't made a plastic material, but colour plastic, and metal. But really the Paragon assets are really high quality, so like what I'm doing here is like a fraction of what the actual materials that they have done look like, and it's pretty pretty crazy to see. So now we want to get that material in there. I've accidentally plugged it in roughness, so let's just do that and that. So that's our coloured metal, which we actually want to be that colour. So we're going to want to make this into the white, try and symbolise the plastic, but because it's metal it's not going to come out white really, is it? Yeah, good enough. And then actually we have another layer, so our final layer. And I don't know whether this would be cheaper doing it like this. This is how I've been doing it. So I want to get my dirt layer now, which is just make it a dark colour. I could put new roughness in there, but I'm not too bothered. And we want to separate that like that. So now we should have something that resembles our original weapon a little bit. Because I'm using the instanced material, I've still got the red colour coming in through there. So what I'm going to want to do is just put the original material on, and now I've got something that sort of resembles what I painted in Painter, but with the added material layer workflow, which allows me to change the colours and any variations and stuff. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. Again, it would be very helpful if you could check out my Gumroad and just put in the comments some stuff that maybe you want to see as I turn this into more of a professional tutorial system. I think eventually past this point my YouTube channel will be used for my own personal work, and then any free tutorials of things that are just running through my head, and the professional stuff will be on my Gumroad. So this is obviously just a rambling video. I hope that you found that useful, and whatever I get to next, I'll see you in the next video.